My whole thing was going out every day for all those years and putting on the best performance that I could in practice. I never thought about the competitions.
The ball never comes over the net the same way twice. There's always something different about it. So I love the challenge. I just really wanted to see how well can I play this sport.
People said, how about the pressure coming down the 18th hole? Pressure. That's what I played for. I wanted to be in that position.
Everybody has his or her strength. And it doesn't matter if you're a sumo wrestler or ballet dancer, you have your own strength.
Winning doesn't mean winning gold only. You win gold, you win silver, you win bronze, you gain experience. It's more about doing something in your life and seeing that's possible, to be great, to be exceptional. It's all a winning thing.
Continuous motion, non-stop.
Watch us dismount. Beautiful.
I used to climb the tallest trees in my grandmother's garden. I liked the challenge just to go higher and higher. I used to play with boys. It used to be soccer at that time for guys, and girls didn't play soccer. And I wanted to be a part of it, so I was kind of a boyish girl. I remember starting gymnastics when I was six and a half. It was a place where I can do something and not damage the couches and the furniture in the house. I loved it. My mom had a difficult time to get me out of the gym.
Nadia wasn't, in fact, the most physically gifted gymnast. But Nadia had inside a drive to be the best that was beyond compare.
I tell kids all the time that I wasn't perfect from my first meet. I wasn't flexible at all. And I remember I got 7.25 on beam. I felt 3 times. I learned from that.
I had a fairly normal childhood. It was a group of like 4 or 5 of us that would hang out and go in the woods and climb trees and, you know, swim in the river in the summer, skate on it in the winter. So I did cross-training early on. I just didn't know that's what I was doing. I always pushed myself. I always listened to the teacher. I wanted to learn. I was very curious. I wanted them to notice me because I'm doing well.
All members of our family were doing sports. They were doing a lot of sports, so it was like part of our life.
My first time I picked the racket up, I was 5 years old, and I just did 200 backhats against the wall. My father said, when you can hit a forehand, if you can hold the racket with one hand, then we'll go on the real court. So 2 years later, at the age of 7, hit my first balls there. I still remember it. I think when I was about 3rd or 4th grade, and I was faster than the boys. I could jump further and throw the ball further. Whatever I did, I was always competitive with myself. I was timing myself to see how long it would take me to ride my bicycle around the garden. And I was alone. I wasn't competing with anybody. I just wanted to see if I could beat my time. I wasn't that good as a tennis player from the beginning, but whenever you can get better at something, I'm there.
I was very competitive in almost every sport. I used to play baseball, and I didn't realize that I couldn't see the ball, so I couldn't play in the infield. Played in the outfield. When the ball came in the air, I used to lose it. so I had to start wearing glasses and braces, so I used to get teased a lot. I was a small kid. When I was probably a sophomore in high school, I must have been 5'7" or 5'8", and maybe 110 pounds, if that. They used to call me Kermit because I had legs like Kermit the Frog. And I played football. I had the smallest head and the biggest helmet. So I used to get my glasses knocked off. I just didn't have the size. And so I never really got a chance to play. I grew up with a mom and a dad that were both educators. I had to get good grades, and it took me a lot of time because I never considered myself that type of academic person that just gets it right away. And so I believe in hard work, and that's what I did. I always kept that same work ethic from 12 years old all the way through the end of my career. My mom was working on a master's degree around or after the 1968 Olympic Games. And when she was in class, we used to have to wait around. And so my brothers and I would go to the track. They had the hurdles out there, and we kept running around the track and having small foot races. We used to stay out there for hours, just playing with my brothers.
My dad introduced me to every game I played. Taught me how to place kick, he taught me how to pass, he taught me how to shoot a basketball, taught me how to dribble. And it wasn't my coaches, it was him. First time I played golf, I was 10 years old. Father took me out. I carried the bag and I would fiddle around and chip around the green. I loved to play all sports, but I loved golf probably more because I didn't rely on a teammate, somebody throwing me the ball. It was something I could do myself, and as much energy I wanted to put in, I got my own results. I was fortunate that a fellow named Jack Nicklaus came to Columbus, and he had a junior class. I started out, same as 60 other kids. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, Grout would say, "Jackie boy, come here. Show these kids how to hit the ball in the air. Show these kids how to take a divot. Show these kids how to hit a bunker shot." Pretty soon he started coming to me in between the Friday lessons, and he'd say, "You and I, let's go out in the range." Jay Grout became like another father to me. He made it fun. He made it so I wanted to learn. He made it so it was a game for me. He made it so that I would get better.
Up until I was 8, we were just like a regular family. Once every year we went on holiday, and my brother and me were fighting all the time. You know, it's just a normal situation. But then I got sick. That was quite hard for my family to be able to cope with. All of a sudden, they have like a daughter and a sister in a wheelchair. I obviously needed extra care. It wasn't easy. In the beginning, I asked the question a lot. Like, why did it happen to me? But there's no answer to that question. When I got into a wheelchair at school, playing hide and seek was difficult for me because I couldn't do it as I used to do it. I wanted to prove that I wasn't different than anybody else and that I could still survive in just society and that I was still the same as my friends. I really think that the environment that I grew up in has a lot to do with who I am now. My parents, they've always been motivating to me and always showed me the things that you can achieve.
Great parenting and great coaching are very similar, I think, in terms of cultivating an environment where they can achieve their best.
First of all, of course, it's supporting. Secondly, that it's really taking charge, especially when they're young. And then realizing when they get a little bit older to give them a little leeway and let them do it more or less on their own.
My father used to walk 20 kilometers every day to walk. He never owned a car, and he was a car mechanic. And he said, your best car is your legs. My mom didn't know gymnastics. My dad didn't know gymnastics. So there was not gymnastic talk in the house. They were more like trying to stop me because I was so intense going for this. I was like, I want to do better. I can't believe I made this mistake. I was frustrating sometimes, even at home, when something didn't work out in training the way I wanted to. My parents were like, if you don't want to do it anymore, we're just going to do what everybody else is doing, which was very boring for me.
In a lot of ways, Bella and Marta Caroli are the perfect coaching pair. Marta has a real keen eye for technique and excellent presentation. Bella is that motivator, come on girls, we can do it.
Bella created a lot of things just so we will be prepared for anything, have the routine on the mind, warm up, not being able to be on a beam. If you get there at the Olympics, nobody cares if you didn't warm up, no? You're supposed to deliver your routine and you're thinking like, oh, I've done that in training, I know I can do that, so I don't panic. Bella used to invite people from the outside and have them make a lot of noise and have us compete. It wasn't very easy. Bella was very demanding, but you have to be demanding because this is what you need to do to be able to get to that level. But if you don't want to get to that level, then you can sit on a couch and watch as a spectator. So it's not for everybody. You know, that kind of success, not only in gymnastics, in every sport, is not for everybody. You have to have that passion and challenge yourself and go through obstacles and have somebody to tell you, this is good, but you can do better. It's always place for better.
In my generation in Dayton, track and field was the big thing, just as big as basketball. All the track meets were usually at night. The stands would be packed on both sides of the stadium. And when the guys would go over the hurdles, everybody in the crowd would just go, whoop, whoop. And so when you're a hurdler and you're winning, from the start of the race all the way to the end, you get 10 whoops because guys were running hard. So everyone wanted to be a hurdler or a sprinter. Coach John Maxwell was the one who really kind of threw me in the 400 meters and taught me how to train doing like 600s and 300s. One day when they had a relay hurdle event, the coach said, who wants to run hurdles? And I raised my hand and I just started running. No coaching, no nothing, just started practicing hurdles. I was just having fun. I never thought that I would ever be like world class or anything like it. By my senior year in high school, I was one of the best hurdlers in the area, but I got injured on the night that I ran my best time of the year. Actually, it blew my whole season out my senior year because I injured a hamstring.
In the rehabilitation center, I got introduced to all kinds of sports and also tennis. And the concentration on something that I could do instead of being confronted with all the things that I couldn't do anymore was such a relief. With the people around me that, you know, didn't ask too many questions and didn't stare at me. So it was just a very comfortable feeling being out there on the tennis court with other disabled people. The national coach saw me playing and he said that, you know, I had talent and maybe you should play some matches and competition.
I had a great relationship with my dad. I enjoyed having him with me. And one time we were having dinner and he said, out there on the fourth hole today, why did you do this or whatever I did? And I said, Dad, you know, I love having you here, but this is my deal here. I've got to do it the way I'm doing it. And he says, okay, never second guess me again, ever. And I mean, did we talk about things? Sure, absolutely. But it was never father telling son what to do. The only pressure that was put on me was put on by me. And I think that's the proper pressure.
First tournament I played, I was a 9. There was a 12 and under, and I was so much shorter than everybody because I was little anyway for my age. And then they were 3 years older, so I was like this, you know. But I got to the semifinals of the tournament, and my dad had to get my mom to come and bring food and money because we ran out of money that tournament. My first tennis coach was George Parma. He auditioned me, and if it went well, he would take me on, and then he ended up taking me on for free because we couldn't afford to pay him what he normally charged. You know, we didn't have that kind of money. So I started going to Prague for lessons from George. My grandmother lived in Prague and close to the tennis courts, so she would walk over and bring me a carrot salad because she said, "Oh, it'll make you see better." And then I would always finish her crossword puzzles for her. But I think sometimes she left a couple things on purpose so that I would feel like, you know, I helped her out. So I would play and then spend the night, hit again, and then go home on the train. I was 9, 10 years old. I was on my own in the big city. So for 3 years, George coached me, and then George left Czechoslovakia in '68.
The tragic news from Czechoslovakia shocks the conscience of the world. The Soviet Union and its allies have invaded a defenseless country to stamp out a resurgence of ordinary human freedom.
Perhaps the only good thing about the communist system was that they encouraged girls to do sports. There was no difference between boys and girls in sports. If you brought an Olympic medal home, you were as big a hero as a woman than as a man. My father picked up how George was coaching me and took over. So he was my coach. My mom played as well, and I was about 12 years old before I could beat her. So I was like, okay, I beat my mom today, you know, so I'm gonna be somebody. My dad spent endless hours on the court with me. He really was my stepfather, but he married my mom when I was 6 years old, so he really was my father de facto. He was always proud of me as long as I fought, which I always did. You know, the biggest hug I would get usually is when I lost, but I was fighting.
People that are great practice with a sense of purpose every day. It's not just going through the motions. Great work ethic is something that you do when no one else is there, when no one's incentivizing you or no one's threatening you or...
We've done every day, but during the Olympic preparation, we used to do 6-7 hours a day. Bela said that he never knew how much I can do because I always did more than he asked to. But you gain confidence because you try those things and you realize you can do them.
The most incredible characteristic about Nadia, she could handle high volume of repetition without letting boredom change the level of her performance.
We used to say, it's not a great day today. Then we actually told the coaches that you feel like a schnitzel today, which means you don't fly. And Bela, we said, okay, we're not gonna do training, but we're gonna play games, which was a kind of a sneaky way to do conditioning, because if you play games and you run from here to there and you do stafeta, you know, you divide the girls in 2 teams and you have a baton and you go, and then who's gonna be the fastest team? We still did something. The hardest thing is to not end up with those days during the Olympic competition because there's no excuse for that.
I went to Morehouse because I got offered a scholarship to study engineering. But the main reason was that in high school, my senior year, I got injured. And so I wasn't going anywhere to run because I wasn't being asked.
Morehouse, I had a track team, but they didn't have a track team.
We used to practice in the hallway. I hijacked a couple of hurdles, so we just put them up and do a little bit of technical work when no one was around. I always saw hurdles as an art form. I was really good at how to shave off hundreds of seconds, manipulating small things from where your foot is placed when you run to how your leg goes over the hurdle. There's 35 meters between the hurdles. Everyone's gonna do it in 15 steps. I was in such good condition that I could knock out 2 steps. Being a left leg hurdler means you can run on the inside. Your left leg is going over it first, and then the right leg is coming over. It's faster to get around the track closer to the inside because that's where they're measuring the track. And if you're going around a left turn, the lane is 4 feet wide. If you're running 4 feet further out in your lane, you're adding more than 8 feet. if you run in the outside of your lane versus running in the inside. The incremental improvement is small, but so are the winning margins.
I have a team around me that help me to become better every day. Tennis trainer, a nutritionist, a physical trainer, a mental coach, somebody that helps me with building a new chair. I realized that my hands and my shoulders and my elbows are my everything. So as soon as I have an injury on one of my shoulders or arms, I will be depending on somebody else's help for, getting around all day or getting dressed or opening a door. So I realized that I don't ever want that to happen.
What we do on court is like all the able-bodied players doing. You're practicing on points and you're working through matches.
I don't see Esther as a handicapped tennis player. I see her as a tennis player that's in a wheelchair, but is looking for new boundaries and new ways of crossing those.
When she wins the title, she's happy, but after the title winning, we're going to get another goal and go for it.
I used to feel guilty if I didn't train and if I wasn't on the court, but I don't anymore, because I just realized that it's not going to depend on one training. Of course, there's time to party, but I need to schedule that.
Ultimately, the true great athletes, it's not about the fame and the fortune. It's about the thrill, being able to go out and execute something in those kinds of moments when I've worked really hard at it.
Some kids start to do something because they want to go to the Olympics, and I didn't know too much about that because there was not too much exposure on TV about the Olympics. When I went to the Olympics in '76, I kind of heard people saying that I'm good and there's going to be a big competition between Romania and the former Soviet Union. But I thought being a kid, that's what people say around kids to make them feel good.
Bella always told her, there are a lot of other girls out there that are way better than you are. So she went in, I think, expecting to do very well, but not really knowing how well she could do.
And you have to remember back in the 70s, the gymnasts from the former Soviet Union, they owned the sport over 25, 30 years.
The Russian women were doing things way beyond what was required, and I think that became sort of the template of what Nadia was going to have to do to finally beat them.
They looked for a special touch, a special explosive power that would get any judge who was sitting there judging going, whoa, what did I just see?
I was nervous all the time. I had butterflies and everything else. I had them all. People thought I didn't have any of those because I look like this. I've been criticized many times that I don't smile, and I was like on a 4-inch beam. Would you smile if you would be there for a minute and 20 seconds? I prefer to smile after I'm done. That's the way I was. That was my personality. It's much better when things are happening instead of everybody's silence for one routine that's only you. That's the scariest moment. And actually, it's better when the music goes and people are running, people are applauding. You think that people don't pay attention to you, So that helps a little bit.
So you don't like being the center of attention?
No, I didn't like it.
There were fewer political speeches today and more sports in Montreal, and a young Romanian gymnast, Nadia Comaneci.
I don't watch the scoreboard usually, but there was a lot of noise in the arena, and I turned my head around and I saw that scoreboard that showed a 1.00, and I didn't know exactly what that meant.
Every little skill in that routine, I did it with much more amplitude than everybody else. People didn't think that a routine, which is a compulsory, you can do that. They thought that you have to go by the book, which I did, but I did a little you know, extra, I call it the Comaneci touch.
Unbelievable. We have another first. 2 teams on one piece of apparatus.
Nadia obviously was more at home on the uneven bars than at her news conference. She was bombarded by questions in English and in French, and her answers in Romanian were brief. What did Nadia feel when she heard the crowd cheering last night?
Ce ai simțit, Nadia, când aseară ai auzit cuvinte, aplaudă, toată lumea aceea? Am fost foarte bine și am fost foarte bucuroasă. Well, I felt kind and I was very happy.
When I look back at that, being 14-year-old, and I'm like, what did I do? I just did a routine. I had no idea when I scored the 10 that they was gonna make history. People didn't go to work an entire day, where they were on the street celebrating.
She has been able to show that you can come from a country that's very small. You cannot have everything in your favor, and yet you can set the world on fire. She was on the cover of Newsweek, Time, and Sports Illustrated all in the same week. That's a feat for an athlete, period, but for a female athlete in the middle 70s was absolutely remarkable.
In 75, the Tennis Federation made it hard on me. They said, no, you're not going to go to the US Open because you're too Americanized. I'm like, what are you talking about? And in the last minute, relented and said, okay, you can go to the US Open. And that's when I knew I could never go back.
Martina Navratilova, the young Czech tennis player, has asked for asylum in the United States. Martina said, I felt if I didn't get out, I could not become the best tennis player in the world.
Have you been thinking about this move for a long while?
Well, I've been thinking about it, for a long time, because my goal in my life is to become number one. I want to play as much as I can, and when I want and where I want, and I didn't get this chance while being under the Czech government. The only thing that I regret about it is that I'm not able to see my family.
When I was on my own, it felt lonely because I couldn't go back. I could talk to my family on the phone, but it was difficult. So we'd speak maybe once every 2 to 3 weeks. And I knew that they were listening in on the phone because there was funny clicks going on and stuff like that. Sometimes they disconnect us if we started speaking anything political. I think, of course, coming to the States and leaving my country, that was difficult. And then coming out, being gay, also, people could snicker. It was okay to snicker. When Chris Evert was introduced, everybody clapped. When I was introduced, people would whistle or boo, or some didn't clap at all. Imagine Roger Federer coming on the court, people not clapping. I mean, it's incomprehensible. I played a match against Chris in Amelia Island, and the big columnist there wrote the good versus the ugly. It was nasty. People kind of were okay to make fun. They called me the Great White Hope. Bouncing Czech, they called me. So, yeah, it was difficult. But, it was what it was. I watched Wimbledon since I was about 7 or 8 years old on TV. So I didn't know grass could be like this high and flat and hard. So it was kind of perplexing to me to be able to play on grass. But I always wanted to win it. When my father talked about it, people laughed at him. But, I was in on that dream.
Her parents were prevented from leaving Czechoslovakia to watch her play.
We were watching TV, and he wasn't nervous. I was too nervous.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
When I look back to 78, she was still vulnerable to the nerves.
This really is another marathon game. It goes to 5 deuces. Chris wins 4 games in a row, making it 4-2. Then Martina comes surging back.
When you're in a match and you're getting close to winning, it still comes back to that moment of blocking everything else out and just be with that ball.
And 3 championship points.
Playing to win is being brave enough to keep going for your shots and using the same strategy that got you there. Easier said than done, but that's what makes champions champions.
After match, I couldn't talk. I was shaking. It was terrible.
It turned out it was 4 years before I saw my mom and 5 years before I saw my dad and my sister. So it was very tricky.
We were missing her because she was so successful, so it was bad. Nobody wanted to talk to us. Mario got out of his job. I played in one tennis club, and they told me I may not come anymore. I go to school, and they tell me, your place is not here because your sister, she's homosexual, and she's a shame for our country. Here is the door, get out of here. And that's the best thing. She left, and she made it. I was very proud of her when she, you know, won the tournament or came. I was very proud.
We were married very young, and Jackie was born actually before Jack turned pro.
So we traveled their first year on the tour with Jackie in diapers and the porta crib in the back of the car.
When he turned pro, he made a commitment that he would never be gone longer than 2 weeks at a time. He said, I refuse for my kids to go to college and say, gee, I wish I'd known my dad.
When I came out on tour in 1962, there were 4 or 5 guys my age that were really good players. Phil Rogers was a terrific young player. Occasionally, my name might have come up. Well, that just spurred me a little bit, too, because, I mean, I wanted to be the best player. In 1962, I came into the U.S. Open. I was too young to feel the pressure, but I did know that I was an upstart facing Arnold Palmer, a legend on his home turf. I was trying to win my first title, and we tied at the end of 72 holes and went to a playoff.
Nicklaus, the challenger, hits a strong approach on the final hole.
Your mind is always working on how you're trying to do something, visualizing the shot that I want to play, how I want to play it, and how I want to see the ball fly.
Palmer has a tough second shot, and his chances are fading. Nicklaus really goes for it.
I've had several times where I couldn't quite figure out what I was doing wrong, and all of a sudden I'd have a dream, and that's it. And I'd go to the golf course and try it, and it worked.
Palmer has one final shot.
The most important thing is to learn who you are, and learn what you can do, and play within that.
And Nicklaus wins. The U.S. Open is his first pro title, and it's one of the biggest.
Winning at Oakmont was in Arnold's backyard. That's your first stamp of, I can do this. When it's under the pressure, under the gun, I can do this. Now all of a sudden here, I'm believing. All those guys that were my competition disappeared from my mind. It was all about what I could do now.
I became better, and I signed up for tournaments on international, like Belgium and Germany, so that close by, Holland. And eventually in 1998, I went to the US Open for the first time with no expectations, and I won that tournament. And I think that was the turning point in my career for saying, okay, it's still fun, but now I want to be the best. People told me that if I train really hard, I maybe can compete in the Paralympic Games and maybe become #1 in the world. In 2000, there were the first, the Paralympic Games in Sydney. So I wanted to go for that. I wanted to train for that.
And gold medal point. And there it is.
It was just more like, wow, that this is happening to me is unbelievable.
Esther Vergeer.
In 1975, Edwin had a summer job. They asked, was he going to come back the following year? He says, no, I'm going to the Olympics. In 1975, the only people that knew Edwin Moses was his physics teachers at Morehouse College.
I was able to qualify for the Olympic trials in the 110 hurdles, 400 hurdles, and the 400 flat in one weekend. And then for me, I had to figure out which one did I have the best chances in. Track season was really just getting going, and we simply ran out of money. All the guys had gone home except for me. So I went straight to the president. My coach and I had to ask him for money. And I told him that if I go, I'm going to win the gold medal, break the world record. And he believed me.
His dad had passed. And that's how our friendship really started. And through the years, I'm like his surrogate father, and he's like my surrogate son. He had made the Olympic team, and I could analyze why. He was a good hurdler. He was a good 400-meter guy. And he put the two events together.
Inserting yourself in that Olympic environment and arena with all the check-in and the crowd and everything else that goes on, that changes the game. That really changes the game. You know the schedule 2-3 years ahead of time. They give you the specific minute, hour that race is gonna go off. Everything led up to 7:25 p.m. on that Sunday night. That's when life stopped for me.
Into the set.
When the gun goes off, your time has come.
And we've got a fair start.
By 7:26, it'll be all over, and it's gonna be a hard, long 47 seconds.
Alfonso of Cuba makes the early move. Gavrilenko out in lane number 8. Now here comes Edwin Moses. Edwin Moses running away with it. Blackshine is second. Gavrilenko is third. It is Moses. New world and Olympic record for Edwin Moses of the United States.
Once you become world class, if you improve 2 or 3 tenths of a second in your life, that's a lot. And the better you get, the less those improvements are. It could be 800ths of a second a year, but you know what kind of work goes into it. My whole life was compressed into that kind of thinking, and it worked. I was lucky. It was lucky.
I saw a lot of Edwin Moses races, and I taped them on television and watched them over and over again. I learned a lot of athletes in the 400 hurdles, they pace themselves as if it's a distance race. It's not a distance race, it's a sprint. And Edwin Moses ran it like a sprint. So when I saw him doing that, I started running it like a sprint. And I ran a lot faster.
The admiration and the work ethic and what people expect from me is just a part of my whole being.
Great athletes set goals, but much like rock climbers, if they're focused on the top and if they're looking up, they're gonna fall every time. So their focus is, where am I gonna put my hand here? And where am I gonna put this hand? And then where will I put this foot? And they look at that as, that's a destination, but what I wanna do is make sure that I'm engaged in the process.
The only goals that coaches are setting are, in 3 weeks, I'd like you to be able to do half a routine with this skill. And maybe in a month and a half, I want you to do the other half with this skill. So these are the targets. But no medals or anything like that, because how would you know what medal you're going to get with that kind of routine?
Here's an interesting thing about Nadia. When you watch your perfect 10 balance beam routine in the Olympics, you might stand back and say, that was perfection. And what she sees is the 1 million minute little corrections that allowed us to see it as a straight line.
Paying attention to details, I learned from my coach. Always, that gets you from the 9.8 to the 9.99. Those little details that people think are not important, and they are very important in the long run. I always tell kids, think about your best routine and what went through your mind at every skill when you did that. You have to focus from the beginning to the end. Some athletes only think of the hard tricks. And if they finish their hard tricks, they mess up their easy tricks. Because they think, oh, I got this, I'm not gonna think about it.
Whatever the scenario is, she likes to end up on top. I don't care if it's the first bag coming off the airplane carousel when your luggage comes down. She wants hers to be the first bag. If two people are pushing their carts in the grocery store, she wants to be the first one to the checkout stand, and she'll do it.
When they were just dating, he had a little basketball thing in the upstairs bedroom, and he had a Nerf ball, and he said, you want to play horse? Of course, he won, and she said, we're playing until I win. He said, I finally had to back off a little bit because I realized she was not going to stop playing it until she won.
People say you got a perfect 10, what can you do better? And I always said, to maintain yourself at that particular level, it takes much more work than getting there.
The great athletes constantly sort of have a little makeover of themselves. I think nobody was greater than that, actually, than Martina. I mean, she looked at nutrition, looked at getting stronger, flexibility, Pilates. I can remember doing some eye drills to make the speed of her eyes quicker.
Between 75 to 81, I didn't have a coach. I didn't know how much better I could have been, would have been, had I had a coach, had I really trained harder. With Renee Richards, we really got into tactics, how to play the point. I was 26 years old and finally learned how to hit topspin backhand. With Nancy Lieberman, she said, you could be in so much better shape. I'm like, what do you mean? I needed that initial push, like, you can do so much better. And that's when I realized, oh yeah, I could. And then we started training. I'm like, wow, I didn't know I could do all that. And then, of course, it just really opened up my game, opened up the possibilities.
She helped revolutionize the way other female athletes looked at their training and in their strength training, endurance training. I think she really raised the bar there.
It's not necessarily that I could hit the ball harder, but I could hit it as hard at the end of the match as I did at the beginning of the match. That was the biggest difference. And that I wouldn't get hurt. And then the next day I can do it again. Mike Estep, he kind of unleashed me. Mike says, just get to the net. I don't care how you get there, just go, because that's where you want to be. And you have the best volley in the game. The girls don't want to see you at the net, so just get there. I think that's where I had the most fun, because I played really aggressive, attacking game.
We were at the PGA, and he didn't play very well the first 2 days, and he missed the cut. I had taken the boys to McDonald's that day while Jack was at the golf course, and McDonald's used to give little prizes when they had the kiddies' meals.
The next morning, with my coffee or whatever it was, boom, there's this statement on the side, no excuse for not being properly prepared. Well, she's right. Through most of my career, I always went early, and I always got rid of worrying about how narrow the fairways were, how fast the greens were. Or most of the guys were coming in the Monday of the tournament. By the time the tournament started, they were still worrying about what the problems were. I had those problems out of the way the week before. I knew what I could do with the golf course. I prepared a game plan of how I thought I was going to play that golf course, and then all I had to do was execute.
The legends of the game have one thing in common. They will never blame and look for others to blame that they didn't do or didn't achieve something. They look right away at themselves.
Let's go. Come on, move your feet. One of the most important things was the mental toughness, the focusing. Can you instill focus? Can you increase? Yes, you can.
I always thought everybody was better than me. And then even when I was winning everything, if I won a match 6-4, 6-2, ooh, Martina's slipping. She didn't win 6-1, 6-1. It was 6-4, 6-2. She's not playing so well. I mean, it was like, are you kidding me? And of course you hear it and then you take it in. Yeah, I had a fragile psyche, there's no doubt about it, but I overcame most of it. I lost some matches because I was nervous or whatever, but I just kept trying.
lack of confidence or feeling like you're never quite good enough can be something else that drives the great champion. So sometimes they appear confident to us watching when inside they're actually quite insecure, and that's part of what drives them.
Pressure only comes from that little 6-inch space between your ears. That's ultimately where pressure comes from. It's not the size of the crowd. It's not your parents. It's not your coach. It's not your teammates. It's all in how you interpret those situations. You either are motivated to succeed in those moments or you avoid failure.
It gets harder when you get older. Everybody gets more nervous when you get older. You know your time's running out. You don't have that many opportunities anymore. When you're 20, it's like, oh, I got 15 Wimbledons in me. When you're 30, it's like, I may have a couple more or I may not. Once you get to number one, the expectations are high, everybody's gunning for you. But it's like, I don't want to be anywhere else. I don't want to be number two. So I'd kind of accepted that mantle and say, okay, go ahead and beat me, you know, go for it. See if you can do it. When she put her physical gifts and matched them with much stronger of the mental side and the emotional side, then she became just all-time great.
It's out. 6-1.
I actually think some of the all-time greats really tap into wanting to be historic, to have a legacy that stands out among the greatest in the game.
Sometimes people choke, and that's a very, very difficult thing. But even champions tend to sometimes choke.
There was a match where I was 5-love up in the second set, and so a set and 5-love up, and then I still lost the third set in a tiebreak. You know, it's just weird how it works. All of a sudden, there's a click, and then your brain doesn't work anymore, and your body doesn't work anymore. Your arms don't do what you wanted them to do, and it's just weird how you lose control. And it's actually a scary feeling if that. You know, that's possible to happen.
I think any great athlete has to look back at what has happened and analyze so they don't make the same mistakes, but then they move on. And when they're in the same situation next time, they have the ability to actually remember the positives more than the negatives.
The greatest challenge is the expectations of myself, but also other people. You know, when is it a motivation and when is it tough on your shoulders? For the Paralympic Games in Beijing in 2008, everybody expecting me to win, everybody was telling me, oh, you're just gonna go there and you're just gonna bring the gold medal back and it's gonna be easy for you and you win everything. And you know, we're gonna just buy a ticket for the gold medal match and that's it. You know, and everybody was like talking to me about that, and you know, it's never a for sure thing, but they were like, it's a for sure thing. I was feeling that tension and feeling the pressure. And then eventually, match point down. I'd never had that in, you know, the couple of years before that. I try to think about matches that made me feel really comfortable about my game. And I try to focus on the things that I am strong at. if I can remember and get the feeling back from the matches that I feel really good about, I usually get the confidence back and the calmness back and the focus back.
Esther Vergeer.
I think that's highest highlight in my career.
When you're riding that wave, boy, life is great. But when that wave comes crashing down, one of the things that separates great athletes is their ability to deal with those adversities and, again, use it as a challenge and as a positive thing in their life to help bring out the most in them.
I didn't have a lot to work with early, and I'd learned about perseverance. I knew what it was like to have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and run around campus because I didn't have a car, have to bum rides to the track. For me, it was about preparing to be the best. Even if you run 20 races a year, you know, in the 400 hurdles, that's 47 seconds. You're talking about 15, 16 minutes of action for 9 or 10 months of training.
That you could be the best athlete in the world and have a bad day on the wrong day, and nobody knows who you are.
I was forced to give up my engineering career, specifically to be ready for the '80 Olympics. Everyone was looking forward to the 1980 Olympics. It was in Russia. I was training hard. All of this was taking place within the backdrop of the Cold War.
I have notified the Olympic Committee that with Soviet invading forces in Afghanistan, neither the American people nor I will support sending an Olympic team to Moscow.
The whole drama with the boycott was very frustrating. Everyone was very upset about that. The athletes were up in arms. I was having a pretty good year, so I went to the Olympic trials, and I came out and ran 47.8 or something like that. So I was in very good condition that year, but we just weren't going to the Olympic Games. Being that a generation is once every 4 years, waiting 8 years between the Olympic Games was a long, long time in the life of a track and field career.
Edwin kept going. You know, he wasn't defeated by defeats.
I didn't understand exactly the meaning of divorce because they were still my dad and still my mom. Plus, I was in a camp most of the time. I was traveling and I was living in a complex. And it was a difficult time with Bella because I stayed in Bucharest, Bella went somewhere else. You have to figure out how to maneuver yourself through those things because if everything will be great and serve on a plate for you, then how would you know the good time, the bad time, the difficult time, the not so difficult? It's the same thing that I say to kids all the time when they have troubles. I said, stop and go back to the base. I think I had moments where I felt that I'm losing my confidence. Mostly I was losing my focus. 78, I had a time when I thought maybe I should retire and do something else, and I didn't go to the gym for 5 months. I went to watch a gymnastic competition as a spectator. And I realized that I should be there, not sitting over here. So that's how I made a big decision to make a comeback. And I said, it's not the time for me to retire now. What am I thinking about? I'm still young, and I still want to do that. I'm still good to do that.
She had to rely more on technique later on in her career. When she got a little bit longer, carried a little more mass, long levers in gymnastics are a disadvantage. You raise your center of gravity, you're height over the beam, you're slower, you can't be quite as explosive as those powerful little kids. And rarely was it that a female gymnast would be a legitimate contender in 2 Olympics back-to-back because it's just so hard to stay at that peak form.
When you win once and you make a lot of money, you get great celebrity, the real great ones, the legendary ones, have something inside them that say, I need to go back to that now and prove to myself that it wasn't just a fluke, or it wasn't just, I had to do it this one time, that I have more within me to give.
And after a 9-9 on the balance beam, she took to the bars anticipating gold. The unthinkable happened.
I made a big mistake. So I opened the door for everybody to, to go for the gold, for the silver.
Her score of 9-5 indicates her perfection before the fall, but that was of little or no consolation to Nadia Comaneci.
I tried to learn from mistakes and correct them immediately. Maybe the most important thing is to always remember that you've done that, you know how to do it.
And she still managed to get 2 golds and 2 silver medals in her second Olympics.
The hardest time for me was when I had to quit, to say goodbye. And I had a speech that I wrote, and I read it so many times, and I couldn't say the word retire. I couldn't deal with that. I felt that I'm gonna do this forever. My parents told me that being an Olympic champion doesn't mean that you gotta get a job. You need to have a diploma, and you have to go to school to finish a university, so I did that. Everything I do today comes from my sport. How to create things, how to think, how to focus. All of the things come from my gymnastics. I'm not sure how my legacy I want it to be. It's more about how people think, that my impact motivated them to do something in their life. Just guessing that there were people that they were in a difficult situation at some particular time, and when you see something on TV that lifts you up, you just think, why can't I do that? Why shouldn't I do that? I think that's what you want to leave people behind with.
I think the wins came very easily, and then from 1967 to 1970, he had not won a major. And then his dad died. It was probably the first tragedy to hit him at age 30. And he said to me, really talking to himself, he said, I really didn't give it my all the last 3 years. I think they say some good comes out of all bad. So I think from that day on, he lived for his dad and won the British Open that year.
And a thrilling climax to the 18-hole playoff. Leader Jack Nicklaus has this birdie putt for the title, but if he misses and Sanders makes 3, the playoff won't finish here. It'll curl away to the right. Oh, it's in! And a relieved and overjoyed Nicklaus wins the championship.
Golf didn't dominate my life. And because my kids really did do that, it allowed me to free my mind to play golf. I mean, I never even thought about majors until I remember walking in St. Andrews in 1970, and Bob Green, AP reporter, said to me, he says, Jack, that's 10 majors, only 3 more to retire Bobby Jones. And I said, really? I said, I'd never counted.
And maybe he would have won more majors had the family not been so important, but I don't think he would change one thing.
5 kids, 22 grandkids. I always feel that's my greatest achievement.
I guess I was burned out in '87, and it was Billie Jean that kind of showed me the way in '89, and that's when I kind of rediscovered my love of the sport. Passion is huge. That sustains you, that feeds your soul. If you're doing something that you're not passionate about, even if you achieve the result, yeah, it's like, oh, okay. And if you can be passionate and achieve the results, then that's the ultimate, isn't it? Before, when I would lose a match, I said, I need to do more wind sprints, so I'll go in the gym. With Billie, it was, no, you need to work on being nice to yourself, because I was always such a perfectionist that I would beat myself up. And she said, no, be nice to yourself. It's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be good enough.
Navratilova standing on the fringe of history.
The only record I really went after was the 9 Wimbledon titles. The other records just kind of happened. But when I got to 8, I'm like, I really want to win the 9th one.
Navratilova, the champion for the 9th time.
I always felt that I could still get better. So that's what kept me coming back. I like to be thought of as somebody that played tennis the way it ought to be played. With joy, with passion, with risk-taking. When I first started, there was no money. I just wanted to play. And I still played at the end because I wanted to play.
Coming back for the '84 games, there was more pressure. I had contracts, people were depending on me winning, making money as a professional in track and field, American television, so there was definitely more pressure.
In lane 5, the man himself, he's being introduced by the public address announcer to the crowd, and they are responding. Start.
He comes out of the block so explosive, and he's on his way.
Flashbulbs flicking all around the Coliseum.
From starting in the back of the pack and figuring out how to work your way up to the front, and then getting to the front and wanting to stay there.
Everybody else is faltering, trying to make 13 steps. He can do it with effortless motion.
The din is now deafening.
You know that, you losing is just a few steps away.
Edwin Moses heading for the finish line. Edwin Moses winning the gold medal.
Records are made to be broken. Most important thing is that I did it clean, no drugs, no steroids.
He's a prototype of physics over chemistry. He had that winning streak for almost 10 years. He didn't realize he had that winning streak till like 5 or 6 years in. And somebody said, you've got so-and-so 60 or 70 races that you haven't lost. And he was that far into it before he realized that he was in, because he was just doing his thing.
I hear people say how they remember where they were when Kennedy died. Well, I remember where I was when Edwin Moses' streak was broken. I was up at New York State High School Championships, and I checked into a hotel and turned on the television. I think they stopped certain shows to give this breaking news. That's how significant that was back then.
You're about to see something that hasn't happened for almost 10 years before today. This is Edwin Moses running against fellow American Danny Harris in the 400-meter hurdles in Madrid. Edwin Moses had won 122 straight races, the longest winning streak in the history of track. Today, he lost.
Eventually, what takes you out of probably any sport is just aging. I could have run another 5 years probably, but the pain that I was going through, it just wasn't worth it anymore, and it was a quality of life issue. But the experiences that I've had, not giving up, hanging in there, being exposed to a lot of different scenarios and people and the travel, it's immeasurable.
In everybody's life, there's something gonna happen that you don't expect and that you maybe don't know how to deal with. And the way you're gonna deal with it, that's the most important thing. And you're the one in control of that.
We have a handicap, but I think everybody has something. And it's a wheelchair for us, but for somebody else, it's glasses or whatever.
It's probably because I got this disability that got me stronger and helped me be better or to be the best.
It's funny because people say, oh, you're so competitive. And I'm like, what is the alternative? To give up, to not try hard, to just say, I don't care? Quitting means you don't try anymore. But not quitting means that next day you're gonna get up and you're gonna try to do better.
Pioneering tennis powerhouse Martina Navratilova announced today that she has breast cancer. She is 53. She told Good Morning America the cancer was found during a routine mammogram after she skipped the screenings for 4 years. A lump was removed, and now she'll have 6 weeks of radiation.
Being in the solution as a tennis player, you have to stay positive, you have to keep believing, and sometimes you have to forget the bad shot or the bad loss, because you have to kind of get that confidence back for that moment, for that next point. That helped definitely when I was diagnosed. It's like, okay, what do we do? I immediately got into the solution. You just do your part, whatever you can do, and then you just hope. But that positive attitude definitely helped a lot.
As I got to be in my late 30s, I wanted to wind down my career. My kids turned to me and they said, you still can beat everybody. Get out there and play. If we beat you, maybe you can quit, but you're not going to let us beat you. So I think my kids actually pushed me for another 5 or 10 years in my game.
He often needed a challenge. And maybe the 1986 Masters is one of the best challenges because he didn't think he could win, and the world didn't think he could win. When we got to Augusta, one of the sports writers had basically written that very thing, and one of the fellas that we stayed with happened to post it on the refrigerator, which Jack saw every day and, of course, never mentioned it.
So I can't really control what somebody else does. I can only control what I do. So I always had to make sure, I don't care whether the press says I'm a favorite or not, I still got to go prove that I can play and do it. Going into the last round, I was 4 shots behind, 8 players in front of me. I got to the 9th hole, and I desperately needed to make about a 12-foot putt.
My goodness, magnificent stuff.
I was always aware of what problems and negatives there were out there, and I made sure that I did it in a positive way of getting to where I wanted to go.
That will slide a little to his right.
Yes, sir!
Many times I'd come down the last 3 or 4 holes of a tournament, and all of a sudden I'd just stop in the fairway and I'd see all these people having a great time, and I'd just go, I said, you know, hey, this is why you're here. This is why you want to be here. Just enjoy this and go do it.
The bear has come out of hibernation.
My son Steve called me from Hattiesburg, and he said, what do you think it's going to take, Pops?
This is for sole possession of the lead. Maybe.
Yes, sir! And I said, for 66 will tie, 65 will win. He says, score ahead in mine, go shoot it. That's what I shot, 65 that day, and that's what I won by.
I like to put in practice things that I've learned through sport. It's not complicated. You know, I think we're trying to make it complicated, and it's not.
If you love the process of trying to be great at something, you're already winning.
It's great to fill up your time with something so productive, even not knowing what's going to happen with that. I would have been great even if I didn't win, because I've learned things that a lot of kids didn't know.
Moses over the final hurdle. Can Moses hold on for victory? Yes!
Once you achieve the goal, most people say, I got it, you know? But you got to go beyond. And see, that's one of the things he did, is go beyond.
I wasn't the largest kid, I wasn't the fastest, but I became one of the best hurdlers because I developed my own style.
When ESPN magazine asked me to do the photo shoot, the first thing that came up to my mind was like, why me? I was telling them that, you know, I don't have the perfect body, if there is a perfect body. And then, you know, immediately they said, well, that is what this issue is about. I'm just really, really proud that I did it. Even if you have a disability, there's a strength within you or with your body that you can do a lot and you can achieve a lot.
As long as I prepared myself the best I could, my results produced a win, okay. But if somebody that week played better than I did, well done. Congratulations. Nicely done. You beat me this week, I'm gonna get you next week.
If you're about winning, then you're in the future. It's like, do you want to know geography or do you just want to get an A? If it's about winning, then it's only that one person that's a success then. That's crazy. It's overcoming your personal challenges. It's totally your journey. I always said I would rather play well and lose than play badly and win.
I want to play this little kids game where you're going to guess which hand the coin is in. We're going to play at 5.
Yeah.
If I guess right or you guess right, you get a point. Then I'm going to guess.
This one.
Yeah, for 2.
Come back.
Well, I figured I had 50-50 chances.
Oh, sorry.